Hello everyone. I hope all are doing well and preparing well for your board examination. So today in this class I am going to explain about second unit of your 10th ICSE 10th history syllabus, growth of nationalism. So I already explained that first lesson, so watch it by my channel. I already uploaded in my channel, so watch it, kindly watch it, that all the different causes for that first war of Indian independence explained very simple language, so it will become very useful for your board examination. Kindly subscribe and share it to your friends, and also like, comment for that more videos. So which are the points, which are the topics you required, so just text me in comment box. I will say that and I will do more videos on that required topics. So come to the part of today's topic, growth of nationalism, second lesson. So already we discussed that first war of Indian independence got failure due to the part of lack of unity, so lack of plan, lack of leadership by the Indian centralized. There were no centralized leadership by the Indian leaders and all. That's why that first war of Indian independence got failure, and Britishers achieved victory against the Indians on that time. So when they not successful in the part of first war of Indian independence, so on that time that Indians started to think about the patriotism. So I already explained that. So why that first war of Indian independence fought between the Britishers and Indians means there were no concept of patriotism, right? So only to protect their specific kingdom from British ruling or British domination, they raised voice against the Britishers. Very good example, Lakshmi Bai. So she fought against the doctrine of lapse, not for the whole country or not for the patriotism. Even we discussed about Nana Sahib, right? So he also he fought against the Britishers because to get the pension amount from the British officers or the British government. So here also we can observe that no concept of the nationalism or patriotism here. So just to protect that specific region, that specific kingdom from the British domination, just they raised the voice against the revolt against the Britishers. That's why we call that lack of unity, lack of leadership, lack of centralized concept and all. So lack of proper goal to the revolt of 1857. So due to a lot of reasons, that revolt of 1857 got failure. So after that started to rise the concept of unity and nationalism here. So what about the factors rise to the concept of nationalism in India, or reasons to the growth of nationalism in India? So everyone, we can discuss it clearly in this video. So come to the part of that. First one, introduction to growth of nationalism, right? So what about the concept of growth of nationalism? So nationalism, first I mentioned the meaning of nationalism. So meaning of nationalism means nothing. See, nationalism means feeling of unity, pride, love for one nation. So that only I told you. Nationalism means not to think about the self or the individual. They should think about the whole nation or the country. So they should think about the country means which feeling should be rise here? Unity, feeling of unity, right? And also pride to the nation. So love for one nation. We must love our nation. We must respect our nation. So this concept we called it as nationalism concept. So nationalism developed during the British rule. So we can observe that when that nationalism or patriotism concept developed in the mind of Indians means during the time of the British rule. So why? Because to avoid the domination of the Britishers, to get rid from the British ruling, so nationalism concept raised in the mind of Indians here. So totally Indians were united against the colonial exploitation. So why that nationalism started here, started to grow in the part of India means to the part of against to the colonial exploitation. So Britishers were exploited the Indians in many different ways, economical exploitation, socio-religious exploitation and all. So totally financial condition of the Indians declined during the rule of the colonial rule of the Britishers. That's why they raised a voice against the colonial exploitation by the Britishers. So another one of the concept I mentioned it here, nationalism led to the Indian freedom struggle. So later this nationalism concept led to the struggle of or freedom struggle. So lot of many different people joined to the part of freedom struggle. So finally they achieved success to get the freedom from the British ruling. So nationalism was one of the very important concept and played very important role to fight against the Britishers or preparing different plans to get rid from the British ruling. So next one, factors leading to the growth of nationalism. So this is very important concept mentioned in your syllabus. You should focus on it. Don't neglect these factors leading to growth of nationalism. It may be the economic exploitation, repressive colonial policies, spread of education, whatever, but all the factors are very important. So individual factors, they may ask it to 3-mark question or 4-mark question in your board examination. That's why, so one by one we can discuss about it. So economic exploitation, next one, repressive colonial policies, spread of Western education, development of press and communication, so socio-religious reform movement. In this video I'm going to explain about first one, economic exploitation. So different sections of Indian society exploited under the part of finance or economical conditions. So next one, repressive colonial policies. British officers, they introduced a lot of different colonial policies which has harmed to the Indians on that time. Okay, so one by one we can discuss about that, especially the socio-religious reform. No, I will make separate video on this because this is one of the lengthy concept. We should discuss about some of the other different socio-religious reformers and all, like Raja Ram Mohan Rai, Dayanand Saraswati, even Swami Vivekananda. So these are all mentioned in your syllabus. So I will do separate video for that topics. Okay, yes. So first one, come to the part of first one, economic exploitation. So economic exploitation means exploitation of money or wealth of Indians, correct? So that we called it as economic exploitation. See, British policies exploited the Indian wealth and resources. See, which were the policies introduced by the Britishers that totally spoiled the Indian wealth and Indian resources. So wealth means economy of India. Resources means India was very rich in the part of availability of lot of different resources like raw materials and all. Some other different even agricultural products and all supplied as the raw material for the British industries. So everything totally exploited under the British policies. So some of the example I mentioned here. For example, raw materials were taken cheaply. Yes, so raw material, always that Indians were supplying raw material to the British industries, right? So that British officers, British industries, they were purchasing that raw material at very lower cost. So they are not giving sufficient amount to purchasing the raw material from Indians here. So that's also one kind of the loss to the Indians on that time. So next one, British goods were sold at high price in India. See how they made that Indians to struggle by the economical condition. Raw material, it was providing, supplying by the Indians, purchasing at lower cost. So no income for the Indians. At the same time, monopoly marketing system established by the Britishers. So monopoly marketing system means what about that? Entire marketing conquered or captured by the Britishers, right? So every goods and products manufactured by the Britishers and selling in the Indian markets. So that all the products or the things sell at very high prices. So while purchasing, Indians should pay high price, while they were selling the raw materials or the goods, they were getting very less amount. So this only representing that decline of the economical condition of Indians here. Based on this policy, Indians become very poor. Economic condition of Indians very decreased in that time. So under the part of economic exploitation, some of the sections struggle a lot. Indian sections of the Indian society struggle a lot. So first one I mentioned about the peasants. So how that peasants struggled under the part of economic exploitation. So heavy taxes and imposed on that, heavy land taxes and all, heavy some other different taxes, revenues they were collecting from the British, Indians here by the Britishers. So heavy taxes has become one of the burden to the Indians on that time. So when they were paying continuously tax amount to the Britishers, so economical condition of Indians automatically decreased here. So farmers were forced to grow the cash crops. So this is also in this point, I think in previous lesson also we discussed about that. So earlier, before the entry of Britishers, farmers were growing some of cash crops, and majority they were growing the food crops to fulfill their basic needs, right? But after the entry of Britishers, when that Britishers introduced the industrialization and all, they required much quantity of raw material. That's why it has made compulsory for the Indian farmers to grow only cash crops. So it has become compulsory to grow the cash crops, but they were not providing sufficient money to the purchasing raw material. So here in two ways Indian farmers or the peasants struggled by this policy actually. How? Because one is shortage of food crops and all, and another one is there were no sufficient fund or the financial support while purchasing the raw material by the Britishers. So next one, famines and poverty affected villages. So famines and poverty due to the part of British policies and all. So famines or natural calamities. So sometimes agricultural activities. So that's one of the game with the part of monsoon we are calling, especially in India, right? So monsoons is very well, so they are getting sufficient rainfall and all, so they are cultivating the crop very well. If some of the natural calamities, if in the time of flood or in the time of the drought and all, they can't grow the sufficient crops. So when they can't grow the sufficient crops, they are getting very less income. In this time also, it has made compulsory to pay the tax for the Britishers on that time. That's why, so these all become one of the reasons to raise voice against the Britishers. So peasants decided to oppose the Britishers and all, and supported to the Indian nationalist movement. So that only we called it as nationalist concept or nationalism. So next one, the artisans and craftsmen. So how that society struggled by the British policies. So Indian handicraft industries declined. So Indian handicraft industries declined. How it declined? In previous lesson also I clearly and simply I explained about that in simple language, right? So when that Britishers installed huge machineries and all, based on that, by the help of that huge machineries, they increased the production level of production has increased. So this handicraft industries means man-made goods and all, right? So they are preparing by their hand, and quantity of the product also preparing very less by the handicraft industries. So they were flooding of that product, we can call it. So flooding of product to the Indian market means what it represent. So how flooded during the flood, how water is overflowing, no? Like the same British goods were overflowing to the Indian markets. At the same time, Indian handicraft industries were producing very less quantity of goods and products. So they failed to give competition with the British industries. That's why this Indian handicraft industries totally declined. So British machine-made goods replaced Indian products. So what that Britishers made, that all the Indian manufacturing goods, everything replaced by the British industries. They started to produce each and every products, so which are required to the Indians, and selling it in the Indian market. So craftsmen lost jobs and suffered poverty. So when that all the machine-made goods, British manufactured goods came to the Indian market, so who lost the job on that time is Indian craftsmen or Indian handicraft industries totally declined, and they has become poor. So poverty increased in the part of that. So due to these all reasons, who started to support to the nationalism here? Artisans started to supported to the nationalist and all, and like the same, they started to oppose the British economic policies. So step by step growth of nationalism. So next one, educated Indians. So role of educated Indians in the part of growth of nationalism also played very important here. Western education spread ideas of liberty and equality. They started to get, some of the Indians started to get somehow few section of Indian society orthodox, they were against to the Western education, but in some of the liberal mind people, they started to get the Western education. So Western education, what about the concept and theme of Western education means, they spread the idea of liberty and equality. So freedom and equality is very important in the society. So that concept collected from Western education, and that educated Indians started to spread the knowledge of freedom and equality to other section of Indian society. So that educated Indians understood British exploitation. So they got some knowledge about the British exploitative policies and all. That's why step by step they started to motivate other Indians to rise the revolt against, or rise the voice against the Britishers. So like the same newspapers spread the nationalist ideas. That nationalist leaders, they properly utilize that newspapers, actually mass media, social mass media, what we are calling, right? At present day, we people are using social medias very fast. We can spread the news and concept to worldwide. So on that time, that educated people also utilize the mass medias like newspapers, magazines and all journals. So these all the medias utilized by the nationalists, and they started to spread the ideas of nationalism here. So that educated people become the leader of nationalism. So those who become educated, especially those who got the Western education and all, they started to lead the nationalism movement in India. So I hope clearly understand for you what I am explaining. I am explaining in very simple language. So I request you to just subscribe my channel, share it to your friends, like and comment something what you require from my side. So I will observe that comment box and I will make videos on your required topics. So please support me. Now come to the part of second one. So economic exploitation completed. Now this is second policy. So second factor to the growth of nationalism. Repressive colonial policies. So that British officers, they started to introduce lot of different policies, but they were completely against to the Indians. So harsh laws and the policies introduced by the Britishers, it has created the dissatisfaction among the Indians. That's why that Indians decided to unite against the British colonial rule. So one by one policies we can observe it here now. First one, Lord Lytton's Grand Delhi Darbar. So Grand Delhi Darbar, one of the policy introduced by Lord Lytton. Say this is very important, don't neglect this. So when he organized that in the year of 1877, organized by Lord Lytton. So what about the concept of this means? To declare Queen Victoria as Empress of India. So after the revolt of 1857, we discussed in previous lesson, right, consequences of revolt of 1857. So East India Company's rule concluded and power transferred to British government or British crown directly. So they started to rule directly from England to India here. So Queen Victoria, she became one of the empress. So to announce that, to declare that Queen Victoria's proclamation, what we are calling, right, so she will become the Empress of India, he organized this Grand Delhi Darbar. So this concept has become one of the important reasons to the growth of nationalism. Why? Because to organize this Grand Delhi Darbar, Lord Lytton spent the money from Indian royal treasury. So every amount spent to the Empress to declare the Empress of India as Queen Victoria, but there were no benefit for the Indians. That's why so Indians criticized the measure of Lord Lytton. So next, repressive colonial policy, Vernacular Press Act, introduced during the 1878. See, this is also very important. Don't neglect this, okay? So very important. So what about the concept of that? Restricted Indian language newspaper means regional language newspapers, magazines were totally restricted. So they should not criticize, they should not write against the Britishers and British policies. So editors were punished for criticism. See, if anyone published one of the newspaper or magazine against to the Britishers or against to the British policies, means they were totally punished under the part of British government. So they were giving cruel punishment for the editors of newspapers. So this we called it as attack on the freedom of speech. So freedom of speech, especially that all the rights, fundamental rights, ruined under the part of Britishers or British policies. So there were no concept of freedom of speech also, totally freedom of speech also restricted by the Britishers. That's why when they were not allowed to express their ideas freely, when they were not allowed to speak freely in public places and all, even when that Britishers imposed restrictions on Indian newspapers and all, so totally nationalism concept increased. They were dissatisfied among the policies of the Britishers and started to increase the concept of nationalism here. That's why this is also one of the very important factor to growth of nationalism. So next one, Indian Arms Act. So Indian Arms Act 1878. So like the Vernacular Press Act. So they should not keep arms without license. Who should not keep arms without license? See, restriction imposed to keep the weapons or the arms here. If Indian want to keep arms or the weapons, they should take the license from the Britishers. So they are going to ask the license from the British officers, means they will not allow to keep the arms and all, and it's not the easy task to get the license from the Britishers here. That's why it has become compulsory to the Indians to take the license to keep the arms. So Europeans were exempted from this license act. So if Europeans, Britishers want to have the weapons, means there were no restriction, but Indians want to keep some of the weapons, means they should take the license. So what it represents? Discrimination. So Indians felt this as discriminated. So discrimination by the Britishers like that. That's why this policy has resent by the Indians against to the British rule and all. So this also led to the growth of nationalism. So next one, age limit for ICS examination. ICS examination means nothing, Indian Civil Service examinations. So age limit was reduced. So what about the age limit then? So earlier it was fixed for 21 years. Now he decided to reduce it for 19 years. So exam age limit was reduced. Indian Civil Service examination age limit totally reduced. So imagine 19 year means that's not the age of face the competitive exams and all, correct? So that age, that students are not having knowledge to face the civil service examination and all. So that has become one of the difficulty to the Indians. And another one is examination centers. So that civil service examination only conducted in London. See, if Indians want to participate in that civil service examination, means they should go to London and face the civil service examination, and also they raise the difficulty of the examination. So it found difficulty to qualify by the Indians. That's why educated Indians started to oppose this policy and become one of the factor to growth of nationalism. So next one, Ilbert Bill controversy. So in the year of 1883, see, in history, years are very important. Years are very important means no need to focus on that all the years mentioned in your textbook, but some of the important years while I'm explaining, I'm telling you, so you should write it in your key point notes. That's very important. So while you are writing the answer in your board examination, with mentioning the year means your answer will getting more weightage. Yes, so Ilbert Bill. it has proposed by Lord Ripon actually. So what about the concept of Ilbert Bill means? Actually this is one of the measure taken to provide the equality to Britishers and the Indians here. So Indian judges can trial the Europeans. See, if any European officers, those who are staying in India, they made some of the mistakes, means right has given to Indian judges to trial or inquire the Europeans. So that bill only called it as Ilbert Bill. So Indians made some of the mistake, means that British officers, British judges were cruelly punishing the Indians on that time. That's why to bring equality among the Indian judges and British judges, Ilbert Bill has introduced by Lord Ripon, proposed by Lord Ripon here. So Indian judges can trial the Europeans. See, some of the equality provided to Indians means, is that Britishers going to agree for that policies? Definitely no it is. So Europeans, what they did, Europeans strongly opposed this Ilbert Bill, means they were not thinking to equality among Britishers and Indians here. So they were always thinking they were one of the superior than the Indians. That's why that all the policies must be favored to the Britishers, not to get the equality among that Indians and the Britishers. That's why Europeans only strongly opposed this bill. So on that time, one of the benefit they got Indians. So when that Europeans not agree to provide the equality, they realized that. So they realized the discrimination, racial discrimination. So racial discrimination means Britishers were thought that they were supreme and Indians were inferior than the Britishers. So this racial discrimination concept totally understood to the Indians, and it has become one of the important factor to growth of nationalism. So finally I mentioned about conclusion. So socio-religious reformation movement, I will explain it in next video, otherwise this video will become very lengthy. That's why. So about the Indian social reformers and changes during the part of social reformation movement, everything I will explain it in next video. Okay, yes. So conclusion, simply I mentioned that economic exploitation, what it did, united the Indians. So may brought the unity among the Indians and all. Repressive colonial policies increased the dissatisfaction, means that all the policies favored to the Britishers and against to the Indians on that time. That's why dissatisfaction. So nationalism become very stronger against the Britishers, and later it led to the freedom struggle also. So totally I hope this video has become beneficial for you, and again I am requesting to kindly subscribe and watch, and also don't skip the video. When started to watch, watch it till the end of that. So I am explained in very simple language. It will become very helpful to easily understand each and every concept and topics of this lesson. Okay, thank you all for watching my videos. Kindly support me.